Pharos Express integrates with other systems. This is useful when Pharos Express is the DMX controller alongside a central control system, or when Express is the only controller but needs to send commands to third-party devices on the network. There are three areas that relate to system integration which work in parallel. In interactions, we'll explore some examples of the triggering that can be achieved using the local I/O available on the controller and through playback events. Then we'll look at integration for system-wide protocol-based communication. The third option is Express's HTTP API. You can find the latest API documentation in the online help. Using an HTTP API is outside the scope of this video, but Express Control offers plenty of flexibility for those familiar with API programming. We'll start with interactions, opening the Configure Interactions helper. The idea of interactions is to map a certain input event to a certain output event. There is sometimes an intermediate step between the input and output to set the properties of the interaction. Let's demonstrate this. For this example, we'll configure the push button on the controller to activate scenes in a space. We select the controller's push button as the input, and select Active Scene as the output. Express guides us through selecting the space we want to recall scenes for, in this case the statue. This interaction has properties to configure. In this case, there's the option to advance through a list of scenes, or toggle between two scenes. If we select Toggle, we can choose what should happen when the button is pressed and released. If we select Advance, we can select whether to iterate through scenes in order or randomly. Additionally, we can select all scenes, including or excluding the off scene, or a customizable subset of scenes. That's our first interaction created. We can also use the controller's local I/O in interactions, but first we need to configure these. Navigate to the Network tab of the Tools menu and click Configure Inputs. The controller's inputs can be configured as contact closure, as a digital input for an external low-voltage source where the threshold range can be set, or as an analog input to capture fluctuating values. Now, using an interaction, let's link the analog input, perhaps from a physical rotary dimmer, to the intensity master for the restaurant's bar space. In addition, let's use an interaction to use contact closure, perhaps connected to a key switch to toggle between two tags in the project. Here's one more interaction that's quite powerful. We can link a tag set to the intensity of a space, which could, for example, allow intensity to be reset following an override. Not all interaction inputs and outputs are compatible. If your chosen configuration isn't possible, you'll see a warning here. There's a lot of different inputs and outputs available, and therefore far too many permutations to cover in this video, but we encourage you to explore what's available. If you'd like more guidance, then there are examples available in our online help documentation, including examples using DALI commands in interactions. Next, let's look at integration. We recommend setting up your project first, then managing any integration with third-party systems using one of these protocols as the final step. We'll start by opening the configuration helper from the main menu. From here, choose one of the available protocols. We'll start with a simple Ethernet API. This listens for simple UDP commands from another system to control or query the state of an Express system. Once selected, we can set the UDP port we want to open, and optionally set an IP address and UDP port on which to send feedback in response to queries. Press Finish, and the simple Ethernet API integration is set up. Once the project is uploaded, Express Control will now listen for incoming UDP messages on the specified port. The message syntax to follow is described in our online help documentation, shown here. Let's demonstrate the simple Ethernet API using Packet Sender. We can see the active scene changing in response to our commands, and we can use the controller's log to confirm which actions have been triggered. The next integration offered is DALI. You'll note that selecting this disables the simple Ethernet API. This is because Express only supports one integration protocol at a time. The DALI integration links DALI group intensity commands to the intensity of a specific space in the project, and links DALI scene recall commands to scene recall in a specific space, or even a tag in a specific tag set. Again, you'll find our online help documentation useful for understanding the behavior of DALI integration. The next integration protocol is MQTT. Explaining MQTT is beyond the scope of this video. However, for those familiar with MQTT, this is where you can fill in your MQTT broker's details. Express Control automatically publishes space, scene, and tag information when it starts up, and keeps this information up to date. Additional MQTT endpoints are available to control the Express system, and you can find more details in our online help documentation. The last integration protocol is Ethernet output. This allows you to send an Ethernet message when a scene starts. From here, set the destination IP address, and select the port and protocol to use. Next, on the Scene Mapping tab, set the messages to send when each scene starts. Keep in mind that Express is not intended for advanced show control like our designer LPCs are. These limited integrations are basic solutions. As such, please be aware that these Ethernet messages aren't guaranteed when Express Control first starts up, only once the controller is up and running.